Hello everyone! Welcome to my Create Room. Today for this episode, I have a lot to share with you and it's all centered around paper. I love paper. I'm assuming most of you guys love paper as well, but it's been a journey as far as learning what papers I love, what kind of matches my style, what is useful, right? And so I just kind of want to go through that, and hopefully in doing so, maybe you'll hear some of your own story with my story that I have to share with you. And I also want to share some tips as far as how I've learned, or a process that I've learned over time and evolved to, that really extends the life cycle of paper in general. Okay, so let's jump into it. So to start off with, let me think. When I first started to scrapbook, I remember that the habit was I would just buy random sheets of paper. Sound familiar? Right? Okay. So I would start buying random sheets of paper, and they sometimes went together, sometimes didn't. I just was more about the eye candy, right? It was like, ooh, that's a really pretty pattern, or ooh, I really love that color, but I wasn't really buying it with an intention in mind or a certain project in mind necessarily. I was just adding to my collection. And that's okay, that's pretty normal when you start a new hobby or a new adventure in far as becoming a creator in a different venue or medium. And so I did that, right? And so my stash started to grow, and not much use out of what I was growing it into. Now, also, if you remember back then, for those of you that probably have been familiar with this, it was like really one-sided sheets of paper. So yay when they introduced double-sided sheets of paper, because that allowed the efficiency and more of variety added to just the one sheet. Okay, so then comes and introduces, right? So I got all of these one sheets papers, and then we get introduced to paper packs, paper pads, right? And these are these big packs, and we're thinking, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, this might help me not feel so overwhelmed and overthinking my selections with one sheets, okay? So then I started picking up a lot of paper pads and paper packs. And personally what I found was that you got, most of them, some paper pads come double-sided, but it seemed like we were going back to the one-sided sheets of paper, right? But I'm thinking, great value, awesome, I'll add it to my stash. But I still found myself being overwhelmed and overthinking with the paper pads. Even though they came with coordinated, it seemed like you got, most of the time, a lot of the same patterns. I pretty much got tired of the pad before I even used probably half of it. In other words, kind of got bored with the patterns and the papers and the colors, right? So this is kind of the process that I went through. Now, at this time, I would say probably along this timeline, this is when I was introduced to the Play to Create system, in a sense, right? It was created. And it was created out of a need to, yes, simplify the creating process for all creators, specifically scrapbookers at this time, to simplify it. And the designer templates really helped in the designing phase that often we talk about. But there was this other need that we often come encounter with because we are scrapbookers, and that is our relationship with paper. Yes, I'm going to call it a relationship because it is very dear and near to my heart. But when we hit this phase, we started to really experiment with, instead of ignoring why we were overwhelmed, or maybe not inspired, or being protective, because that's an emotion I remember feeling too, of my paper. In other words, saying, oh, I don't want to use that paper yet because I want to save it for the special occasion, right? I don't know what that special occasion was, but that's what I was telling myself in my mind was I'm going to save it. And so there was this protection going on that's overwhelmed. And so we started to analyze what is that we need to create a layout. And again, we were focusing a lot on the 2-page mindset or 2-page need, right? And so, of course, this is when, and we have a lot of videos on this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I wanted to share the journey to get to some of these other tips that hopefully you find insightful that I wanted to share with you. We came up with some guidelines for ourselves, but then of course we share these guidelines freely with everyone in the community in hopes that it helps you to get to this phase. And so what happened is we came up with these guidelines for picking what we called a paper kit, really a layout kit. And a layout, a 2-page layout to be specific. And to go along with that, we decided that we need 2 sheets, right, for our background sheet. So you need 2 sheets for your background. Basically, that's what you're gonna build or create onto, no matter what type of scrapbooking or style that you do. You usually stick your pictures in your scraps of paper and you put it on top of a sheet of paper, right? That's how it's been for years. Then we decided that we need just one main pattern that sets the mood or the theme. And by simplifying how many pattern papers, I found that it took away the busy feel that often when pattern papers came into play, that you could get overwhelmed, right? So one main pattern sheet for the main pattern. Then we realized we need probably 1 more sheet. And this changed when it got double-sided, but what we recommend is 1 to 2 sheets, depending on if it's double-sided or not, for something that supports that main pattern. And again, hopefully this is sounding familiar. If not, please jump over. We'll send a link out for these tips. But I will go over it just here briefly. And then we decided that we need 1 sheet for mounting your pictures. And sometimes you would use all of these 5 to 6 sheets, and sometimes you wouldn't. It just depends on what you end up decorating with. So once we came up with these guidelines and started to experiment with it, I stopped buying paper pads and paper packs. I went through my paper stash, and this is what I'm talking about, an old video on YouTube that you can find early on, that I was able to take these guidelines and utilize the paper stash that I have to create these paper kits, okay? And so basically that process was, I had all these single sheets, as I told you, right? And so I would start building them and putting them into little packs of their own. So I recommend that you get 12 by 12 paper or backs, or you get like page protectors and you can stick them in here, okay? So huge benefit, because I started to use my paper stash. And it took a lot of the time off of when I actually had time to sit down and create and to actually scrapbook and do, you know, the precious time that we get to do that was spent on actually accomplishing the layout, not searching through all my supplies to try to find out what I was going to sit down and actually do, right? So huge benefit I found. And I'm going to show you guys my paper stash here in a little bit. It's nothing like it used to be. And especially if you look at idea book number 1, if any of you guys have the Kiwi Lane idea book number 1, that was probably the same time frame that Charlotte, Debbie, and I were basically experimenting with going through our own paper stash and these guidelines that I just shared with you, right? So it's fun because for me, I looked at that journey, and I hope that you guys find yourself along that same journey and hopefully get to these tips that I'm going to share with you today are insightful. That's where I am personally on my journey. So I'm going to share with you all the way to present journey, right? And so I did that. I took my paper stash. I started to create these layout kits, right? These custom layout kits using the stash of paper that I have. And we recommend that because we understand that you probably are at that same phase or have those same needs as we did with the paper stash that you currently have. Either because you were buying single sheets, random single sheets, and you need to formulate coordination between multiple sheets, or you were buying the big paper pads. So even the problem with the paper pads is that if you sit down, you still have to do the work. So often what I did is I would actually pull all my paper pads apart and then put them into those 5-6 sheet kits like I just talked about, okay? Then it also changed the way that I shopped for new paper, because clearly I didn't stop buying paper. I had a lot to Madison's laughing behind the camera. I had a lot of paper stash to go through. Let me put this but I still, things caught my attention. But instead of buying in single sheets or paper pads, I knew kind of now what I was looking for. So for example, I have this kit from Authentique from 2014 that I still haven't used, but I still love it, thankfully. But I remember buying this, and I remember buying it intentionally, right? So here is a close look at what I mean. So these are double-sided, and I think they're beautiful. So I got 2 sheets for my background, right? And then I have a main sheet, kind of this main pattern, that definitely the theme here is fall, right? It's a fall theme. And then I picked 1 to 2 sheets that support that. And so for me, that's where these 2 other supporting patterns really help that. And like I said, luckily they're double-sided, so I'll get a lot of use out of that. But one thing to pay attention to that, just really quickly, I'm trying to get through all this information. It's going to be good, I promise. You'll want to look at sizes, the contrast between them. That's really what defines a supporting pattern sheet, right? A supporting sheet. So the difference between a short supporting sheet and a main sheet. A main sheet usually has theme. It usually has, you know, like a theme to it. And then your supporting ones are kind of usually general, but that you want them to layer nice with your main one, just in case you get there. And then this is where that 1 sheet for maybe photo mats come into play, or other additional layers. And again, we recommend like blenders in this case. You'll see that it's not a busy pattern. It's a nice pattern that has the same color palettes, but it's a blender. In other words, the pattern itself doesn't really have a lot of character.
More neutral.
Yeah, more neutral, right? Okay, so then I started to buy them this way. And then when I get home from the store, I would stick them in a bag. And they would go into my collection that way. That way, when I went to go scrapbook, as I just mentioned, that process is done. I simply grab the kit and I can sit down and start to play, right? Grab some photos to go with it, and then I have a kit. A lot of times people say it's super helpful because if they're going to a crop, they do all of that work before, and then they know that they can take their little layout kits and have their projects lined up to what they're going to create. All right. You know, I remember, it's kind of a funny story. So we have pictures of like me, Debbie, Shiloh as we learn this process, and our experience with even going to a store and buying paper changed. So I remember the days where I would just go like this, picking off paper off the shelf and saying, oh yeah, I'll buy that, to where we would actually pick out paper and you would find this on the floor, spreading out the paper and saying, okay, here's my 2 background sheets, here's my main pattern. And I remember the people in the store, like the workers, they'd come down the aisle and they'd be like, are you okay? I'm like, yep, I'm good. In my mind, I'm thinking, it would be nice if you guys just could set up a table so we could spread these out, making sure they worked, right? And there were some times I would get so attached to a main sheet paper, like a main pattern, that, again, getting me back to that phase 1, where I was just like, oh, I have to have this main pattern, it's so cute. And I would spend some of my time trying to find other patterns, even possibly ones out of that collection that would work. And sometimes collections just don't have enough variety in them to give you those guidelines. And I would have to walk away from that main pattern. That's something I had to learn.
no.
Yeah, and something I had to learn because I remember thinking if I can't buy them already coordinated, then it's just going to take more of my time later. So again, when it got to a point of actually buying additional paper, I bought it with those guidelines in mind. Okay, so now we get to where we started to create Kiwi layout kits, right? So once we started to manufacture our own paper, in a sense, we introduced what we called layout kits. And they weren't just like paper pads or paper packs. We did that work, basically us sitting in a store, and well, not really a store, but in the office, in the design room, analyzing all of that, doing all the edits and saying, nope, that doesn't work, go back to a drawing paper, we need a better background sheet, we need a better color, whatever that might be. So we did that, and we just started to create them this way instead of creating them in a fashion where you bought them individually and you have to do the work on your own, or we just put a lot of really cute patterns together, right? Because that would be really great from a marketing point, just catch them with the eye candy. But we want it to be useful, meaningful, and simple, and that is something that we always try with all of our products. So we started to produce them this way, and to expand on that journey, what we learned with our evolution of paper relationship. I think it sounds weird to do a paper relationship, but that's how it feels. And then of course we leveled up and we said, you know what, really? You often have scraps of paper left over for this, and sometimes you just need more background sheets and another 1 or 2 patterns. So we started to call them double layout paper kits. In other words, they came with 10 double sheets of paper, double-sided, and that creates 2 2-page layouts or 4 1-page layouts. And the papers and patterns already coordinate, making it super easy for you to finish multiple layouts quickly and painlessly. Painlessly here, guys. And then of course the layout ones were, we just did 6 double-sided sheets of paper, and those we recommend created a 2-page layout. So we just added more additional sheets, and this philosophy here is what we kind of ended on because we saw that you're kind of usually interested to make more with one pattern color, usually more than one layout kit. Like layout, you want to create another layout. Sometimes 3 with the same paper, I don't know about you guys, but after like 3 or 4, that's when I start saying, oh, move on to new paper. Like I'm interested now to get new paper into things. So with that said, this is what I wanted to share with you, is what happens after I take my layout and I create a 2-page spread. Then you're often going to have leftovers. And previously I shared with you kind of what I do with my cards, and I'll recap on that as far as taking the scraps and making them into little card kits. But I will recap on that a little bit, because what happens is after you use these, you will have some scraps left. And I'm going to, for the sake of, just call them leftovers, right? Like leftover scraps. So let me show you kind of what that looks like. There's 2 scenarios that I often find after I take my layout kit and I transform it into a layout, I get left with scraps. And in this case, sometimes I'll get left with scraps that have like larger 12 sheets or 12 width, like, right? So when it has the 12-inch width still intact, that often like tells me, oh, I could probably create another layout because I can cut a border out of this. I could create a nice place mat, in a sense, behind my photos. I could cut a flower out of this pattern still, right? So a lot of use still left in this paper. So what happens is then I take these leftovers, and if it's this scenario where the 12-inch is still intact, this is where now I still go back to my single sheets. I'm still getting through some of my single sheets. Can I show you guys what single sheets I have left? This is a process, y'all, because this is not what it used to look like. This right here is mainly all of the single sheets I have left.
No way.
Yeah. on that first phase, when we started to use our scraps, I went through a lot of those stashes that I had for years. Everything else that you see I bought since. But this first phase, I mean, we're talking like, look at this. You guys are gonna go down memory lane here for a moment. Like I have like a pink paisley sheet still from 2010 sitting in my stash. I have a My Mind's Eye from 2008 sitting in my stash. So these are the single sheets that I really have never found other single sheets to make them into a kit. So they never made it through that process because I didn't have other ones to pull in with it. Everything else that did get turned into a layout kit, I used. I created a layout and I found that my stash decreased and my finished layouts increased. So again, I did book number 1, I did book number 2. Those were like the samples of using the stash that we had, which is also why in I did book number 1, here I have them right here, which we don't sell anymore, but if you do have it, you'll notice, let me find you a good example here. We don't do this often anymore, where the background was stripes. Like now we were like, ooh, we've learned over time that we recommend a more subtle background. And so even though that's kind of what we keep in mind now, we still of course wanted to use what we were experimenting at the time and had purchased, right? So you'll see more of those, even like here, this busier backgrounds, and you'll see as we progress, we've learned, you know what, it actually helps your pictures pop more when you do that more blender pattern style that I showed you. All right, so back over here. So if this ends up being the case, then naturally I would see if I have anything that possibly could be a background that I could just basically make a secondhand layout kit again, because right here I can take my scraps. All I need is a couple more background sheets, and whether that you just transform it into a 1-pager or a 2-pager, completely up to you. Personally, for this one, I actually decided I wanted to do a 1-pager. So I have this really subtle cream, and a lot of times I'll buy little background sheets like this that are neutral, or like white cardstock is one that I'll turn to with my secondhand kits, because you could put it on white cardstock and then utilize this and make another layout, right? So I had this picture of my mother that my sister sent me, and it was of her hands. She had taken that picture of her sewing and her hands, right, as a creator. And I love that because I believe that we're all creators. And of course, these hands are one of our biggest tools as far as being a creator. So the reason I love that is because when I saw this piece of paper, which I didn't use it the first layout that I created with this kit, but this secondhand layout, it really stood out to me. The first one, I was more drawn to this pattern, but then this one, I was like, you know what? I love that it has the sewing machines on there. I'm going to now use this secondhand kit, and I'm going to put in a background because, again, what's missing here is a full 12 by 12 sheet, right? Once you take a layout kit and make a layout out of it, you're going to have some kind of scraps of some kind. And like I mentioned, I'm looking to see if that 12 by 12 width is still intact, and if it is, I'm going to add another sheet or 2. In this case, I'm going to focus on a 1-pager. I'm going to journal about this. And I actually have some of that here. I'm going to stick all of those supplies in here. And in this case, I have pictures in mind. So now I just retransformed my scraps back into a secondhand layout kit, okay, by adding in another sheet. Then my process is usually I put it over here, and when I get a chance to get to it, I know that those have pictures in it, and I'll go over that here in a minute. The second thing that you might notice with your scraps of paper after you get done creating a 2-page spread, especially if you stick to those 5 to 6 guidelines sheets of paper, not all the time do I end up with, it really depends on how many layers I do. So I think that's why why it's worth noting, is I'll end up, like in this case, I ended up with these extra scraps. And I did have this sheet of paper that is 12 inches still intact, but it is very limited because it is only one-sided. And so I know, like, I'm like, and so what I'm gonna do with this one is I'm gonna trim it up and turn it into a second-hand, in this case, transform into a card kit. So let me show you that really fast. As a recap, like I said, I've done this previously, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. But overall, that's kind of the life cycle of paper, that I take paper through that life cycle. I start by creating layout kits, whether they're custom layout kits from your paper stash, or of course, if you're buying Kiwi Lane paper, we produce them and create them with all of those guidelines in mind already to help simplify it and make it as painlessly as possible. And then I take that, I create a 2-page layout, and then I take the secondhand scraps. I add another sheet from my single sheets, create a secondhand layout kit again, and then most likely you might even be able to go through that paper cycle to a card kit, depending on which phase you go through that. To get to a card kit, secondhand card kit, basically what I do in this case, I trim these down, and I have discovered that these storage things, we actually do carry them in the shop. We recommend them for the designer templates, but I actually personally use them for my scrap card kits. And so I was looking at them one day thinking, I should turn those into a thing. I think Jill, like right after I shared it, she thought the same thing. I'm like, we're on the same brainwave here, guys. But so the process here is you take your scraps and you condense them down into smaller pieces of scraps, clean them up, and then I put them into little pouches of their own. So in this case, I typically do a traditional card size, which is your 5.5 inches. So I would take my scraps, and honestly, I start just trimming them up a little bit. Where I can leave a 5.5 inch width intact, I do. So for example, right, I kept that at 5.5, and then all these other pieces, like I would clean that up really fast, but I wouldn't throw this away yet. I keep that, I'd add it to my stash, all of these other pieces, but I do take off the little hanging like pieces, right, so that it kind of goes in nicely into my little pockets here. And so I would just do that. Again, I start with 5.5 where I can, and then trim it down from there. Let me go to this way. There we go. Of course, once I get them all cleaned into like a little paper pile of its own, I do that with all of these. Is that making sense? Does anyone have any questions, Madison?
Any questions, friends?
Any questions? Of any process of the paper life cycle, well, my paper life cycle, the cycle that I take my paper on. So then, let's go ahead and just say that we get to that point. I feel like I pulled out, oh, there it is. I would go ahead and stick it into these pouches, right? And so that's really nice, is that I can stick these little things. This one is the 4x4, so I have to trim it just a little bit more. But and then what I do is I open this up, and if I need to create a card really fast and I don't quite have one, I look through the papers that I have, and I'm like, ooh, you know what? That would be a really cute birthday card. I'm gonna take that pack, pull out all those scraps of paper, create a card with the little pieces that I have, and take. It just makes it really easy and nice and clean. Because my process before the process that I showed you, and again, it's always evolving, was that I would just stick them all in a drawer, all my scraps of paper, and rarely go back and visit them. So when I finish a layout, after I put together a layout kit, I finish a layout, I just take a quick moment to assess, is this going to be turned and transformed into card? And if so, I do what I just showed you here. I trim them up and make them into such. Or is this going to be transformed into a secondhand layout kit? And if so, do I have another full 12 by 12 sheet that would work to make it, to go along with these scraps of paper for a secondhand layout kit? And then I do that. If I don't have the background sheets personally in my stash yet, from my single sheets, because it's very slim, and I don't want to necessarily put it on a white background, because even though that is a great go-to, and I do have white cardstock on hand because I do find a lot of use out of that. It's kind of one of my staple things, right? Then I'll just put it in here and I'll keep an eye out in the future. Or if there's something in here, then I'll buy intentionally background sheets that I think will work with those scraps of paper. But that's all I have to buy. And that will extend that life cycle of that paper use even longer.
Yeah.
So that's what this little bucket's for.
Becky asked, what is secondhand paper? Do you want to clarify that real quick?
Secondhand is my way of saying when you get done with a paper kit, right? So you take your layout kit, what I just described to you as a layout kit with these papers, or these tips and guidelines, and you transform it into this, the 5 to 6 sheets of paper. You take these 5 to 6 sheets of paper, you create a 2-page layout. You get left with what I call secondhand.
Like the scraps, like
yeah,
the hand-me-downs.
It's like what you got left over, and this becomes, I'm terming it, y'all, a second-hand layout paper kit, right? It becomes, you took your paper, you created a layout, now this is your second one, creating it out of the same scraps. So it's your scraps left over from the first one, which basically is like a hand-me-down, right? And then of course, if it doesn't work and then necessarily, your scraps don't necessarily work to create a second layout kit, paper kit option, then, and it's really not the same because they're not full 12 by 12, right? You're really creating a second hand type of layout kit because it's going to be your background sheets that have to be 12 by 12 size, plus whatever scraps that you have left over, and you'll manage to make something out of it beautifully. I do it all the time. It might not be as layered as you'd like, especially this is why I find them helpful for my random one pictures that I have, that a one pager would come in handy for those, because that's usually a lot of times what those be transformed into after you take your scraps. Hopefully that was clear.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
It's a new term. It's a new term, and I'm going to say that that's kind of my thought process. I'm trying to explain my thought process that I've discovered along the way. So, and again, if it doesn't happen to work for secondhand transformation into a layout kit, then transform that
into cards.
Into cards, correct. Yeah.
We were actually cleaning her craft room today.
Yes.
She kept trying to throw out these scraps. I was like, no. It's like, I'll use it for my bullet journal. I mean,
I think that's also nice. My kids know that the scraps part is open-ended unless I have it
in a paper kit.
In a paper kit.
That actually leads me to this question. She says, your studio's so clean. Please tell me you have more stash somewhere.
I do have more stash, but I'm going to give you insight. And I will give a warrant. I meant to mention this at the beginning. It's like a disclaimer. I cleaned my room just for you guys.
It was kind of a disaster before.
I cleaned it just for you guys because I was inviting you in. But, no, it does not stay this clean at all.
Never. This will last maybe a day or two.
So, as I explained, my scrapbooks that I have in my living room, which I'm not taking you on that journey because that's not clean, have taken all of those single sheets of paper and transformed them into layouts. So I am to a point in my journey of a paper journey that I have what I have left over, and I'm happy to share it with you guys. But my goal and my hope for all of you guys is that you'll find yourself along the same journey, utilizing your paper stash, and then start buying it more intentionally, discovering what that style is. If these guidelines help you that I just shared with you, you can adopt them and make them your own in whatever fashion that is. I have found that it has made what I use more useful, It has simplified the process too as well, because part of the creation process, you can't help, especially in scrapbooking process, paper is a big component of that process. And so, so I'm left with what I have left. I showed you some old sheets that I have, and it's just the little amount of in that pocket. These are some of my secondhand kits that I put together. So I had some extras, and I put my little pictures in there.
And I will say, her paper stash hasn't, like, her paper stash, it's more organized. It's still there. You still have a lot of paper. It's just more intentional,
Yeah.
I'd say.
I don't keep single sheets anymore. I keep them all in these little bags. Again, if these bags, you can buy like 12 and a half, I think, on Amazon. So just go search like 12 and a half. You would want at least 12 and a quarter, because paper is at least 12 inches by 12 and a quarter, I would say. It's been a while since I've looked. I just recycle the papers or the bags now. So I don't throw bags away. I just have a stash of bags, and then when I get new paper, I put them in the bags.
Once the paper kit is done, you make a new paper kit.
If you don't have those, the second thing that I pull on for bags, so like when I open a kit, for example, like see this one, it has the little sticky thing on. I don't throw it away, I keep it and I just recycle it.
So yeah, so that's what a lot of people are asking, where you get those. So she just reuses, recycles.
Yeah, I recycle, and if you don't have them, then page protectors.
Yeah.
Just 12 by 12 clear plastic page protectors. You can store your paper kits in them, and then once you finish your layout, you can use it to put it into your album.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you can find those like craft stores, like Hobby Lobby, Tuesday Morning.
Again, page protectors, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, let me see here.
Let me turn real quick. Oh, don't want to see that. But yeah, so we're getting a lot of questions about what products you use for organization and stuff.
Okay, so for me, I found this really nice hanging wall. It was more for decor at the time, and I've kept it along with me.
It's like perfect for the 12 by 12.
Which often, if you want something like your next go-to, and you have the wall space, like office, you can find an office store, right? They sell like file holders. Just make sure it's 12 inches wide. Here's the other thing, and I think Lindsay just did a show on this, on organizing things, and they are super helpful. I would agree with her. I used to have the paper organizers from Totally Tiffany, but they were falling all the time and bending, and it just didn't work. So I kept the sticker on here so you guys can see it. These were from the container store. This is a small size, but they are 12 inches, or they're 13.
Yeah.
So that's always the kicker here. And even the file holders from like Walmart that have like little lids, I think they're like $3 or $4. Those work as well. Guys, sometimes I'll take 12 by 12 paper with me to the store
and just measure.
And I'll stick paper
I can
inside
attest
of
to
things.
this. I've seen her do it.
When I bought this,
we got this Hobby Lobby?
No, it was Home.
It was something, but she.
Home
Yeah, that
Decor
was
or something like
so
that.
funny.
I came home because I wasn't about to buy this if it didn't work. I came home and I grabbed a container.
Went back.
I took it back to the store and I was like, will this fit 12 by 12 on this top sheet? It doesn't fit it on the bottom shelf, but it does fit it on the top one. So anyways, so here's another look. I just find that these are really nice. Again, I've gotten to a point, I'm going to take that off now that I showed you, where I have some of my paper kits here, and again, everything's in little bags. So as far as single sheets go, those that I showed you over on the table.
And those were in the same containers, for those of you asking. The same containers that you got from the container
containers,
store.
Correct. And small is just meaning that it's this wide. This medium one.
Same place, container store.
Yeah, it's just a little bit wider, and that's nice for some of these, like Lindsay mentioned too, like they really are nice for like the Kiwi Club kits.
Yeah.
So I have some in there. And then I have one dedicated just to cardstock. I didn't even show you guys this because I know exactly what phase that some of you guys are going to be in. Again, hopefully this is showing you what you could utilize those papers, especially with the Play to Create system. It's all built on simplifying the creation process, but utilizing what you already have and taking advantage of paper is one of the best tools in your resource.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all of these shiny things, great, they're awesome, but really at the end of the day, it's about your pictures and the paper that allow you to, those raw materials that are necessary, in my mind, to create a scrapbook. So as a creator, the raw materials we need is the pictures and the paper and the adhesive and those things. So the Play to Create system was built all around that, like simplifying it back to the basics. What do we need? And then what are the other problems that sometimes we run into? And that is the ideas, the inspiration, awakening that creator inside of you and having a tool that helps you do that and tap into that. And that's really where the Play to Create system shines in that. So, cardstock. That's it, guys.
Mm-hmm.
I rarely buy cardstock. I buy the whites and the blacks, and I like the taupe color on hand. I use this for a lot of projects sometimes, or printing, journaling on. I definitely print a lot of things on 8.5 by 11, or I cut this in half and I use it as a card base. So I go through a lot of those as well, or I print printables on them, but for the most part, this is what I have left. And it's a really, really great, fulfilling thing to have. But I really randomly ever buy cardstock because if I'm gonna buy something for the background sheets, like I said, I usually buy something with a little pattern on it to give me that, even though it's not texture from a filling point, a little blender contrast pattern gives that texture visual to your design. That's why I personally love it. But use what you got. If you like cardstock as your background sheets, then use it. But that's just where I've come along my journey. It's kind of discovered. I personally love a little bit of pattern on my background sheet. I just don't want it to overwhelm my pictures in any sense. So I have another one dedicated to like specialty papers, because these you do cut in too often and then you just have like little random scraps left. Like this is, crimped paper, which can be a lot of fun. I have a couple of those crimped paper sheets. I have corkboard sheets, which are a lot of fun. We did that. We did burlap in an old Kiwi Club kit, past Kiwi Club kit, I guess you'd say, which are a lot of fun, little accent texture things you can add. So vellum, I use them randomly. I think some of you guys are even better at using some of these things. I bought this one.
That's pretty.
It is really fun. I bought it when it was on sale at Hobby Lobby. Sometimes they put their specialty paper on sale. And so I thought, I'm gonna pick it up.
Might as well. Might as well.
Yeah. And I thought this would be pretty as a border.
I'm like thinking like wedding or like
like having this piece layered next to a really pretty pattern. Anyways, so specialty papers. Like glitter paper, which again, I don't use the full sheets of these. Like I would never use a full 12 by 12, but I would use it for little accents and details, right? So I cut into this a couple times. Okay. So that's some paper. And then this is the last idea I wanted to share with you guys. My other discovery that I thought I would share with you is this little compartment. It is a little pricier. It was like $99 or something like that.
Yeah.
From IKEA, you guys, I was walking past IKEA and it's a shoe drawer.
I remember. I was like, you want this for what?
Yeah.
She's like, no, for my paper. And I was like, no.
Walking past it, we're in the shoe section.
Here, let me get a good
And
shot of this.
This is what I did. I went home. I grabbed a 12 by 12 sheet of paper.
But back to IKEA.
I went back to IKEA and I said, would this work for 12 by 12 paper?
Lo and behold.
Because before this, I had another compartment and like I had it all in my closet, but it's kind of in this evolution of paper journey. And it did.
It fits the paper.
It fits the paper. So
it honestly makes more sense for paper now than it did for shoes.
I need to manufacture my own because they're only marketing this for shoes in your closet. And I was like, no, this could be used for 12 by 12 paper, you guys. And so you'll see like this one, look right here in this cubby. Madison, Insight. There's plenty of room still left in here for more paper.
Yeah.
I counted them up, and I think based off of how I put together layout paper kits, again, each in their own individual little thing. This one was just Kiwi, so it was already made that way. But, so I didn't have to like repackage it. It was just packaged the way that it goes. I would say probably about 40 in each compartment.
40 paper kits?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Layout
awesome.
paper kit.
And there's 4 compartments on this, so that's
Yeah,
like
so
160 paper kits that you
I was
can.
trying to figure out how I wanted to organize my paper. So these don't have pictures in them yet.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, I'll get to a point where I might go through my pictures, and if I do put pictures on them, I move them over to that
There's
section.
the system in the craft room is no pictures. Pictures over there on the wall. Oh,
Well,
okay.
there you go.
A little picture there.
So, just because I don't want to forget that I have pictures and things, and then like I'm like, dang, I should have scrapbooked that, but like all of these don't have dedicated. Now, with that said, I do have my pictures in a thing, lots printed that I could put in, and I can show you guys that here in a minute if you like. This is how I thought. Now, this is only about a year old, so I'm still evolving on this, but so far I've loved it to the point where I want to share it with you guys. Sometimes when I try things for the first time, I'm like, we'll see if this works out, right? Or if it's going to be a pain in the behind. I have loved this. If you guys have a wall space, recommend it. But again, if you have a lot of paper, then you're like, that will never work for me. I need a full closet and under the bed for my paper. The whole basement. I hear you. I hear you. And again, I really try to use what I have. So with the Kiwi Club kits coming every month, I know that I'm not going to be wrestling as much with those papers. So I really love using those each month. And those keep me busy in general. Like, every month I'm able to do at least two page layouts, and then I create probably another 3 or 4 depending on the month kind of thing. And I just leave them out because I'm lucky now to have a room where I can shut the door and leave it out. Before, in our other home, I used to leave it out on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm grateful for that. So this is my spring paper.
Spring.
So I have, pastel colors, pinks, flower patterns, anything related to that. I have some more summer papers over here, and that's where I put my travel papers often. It's just whatever I think about summer, those are the papers I put in there. Bright patterns. I think of summer, really bright and bold patterns. Those go in this one. And then I have one for my fall. So again, Halloween, Thanksgiving, fall patterns, oranges, browns, anything related into those color palettes even, not necessarily all the time the themes, but I think most of the papers that fall into those color palettes end up being a fall theme anyways. And then I even like the more playful patterns often are more bright, right? Like your bright reds and blues, like your primary colors. I put those in my summer because that's what I think of. Like if I'm like, ooh, I need something with like bright reds and whatever, I'm like, ooh, it's probably in this one. And then I'll shuffle through those and see if I can find anything. And if I can't, then I go to an alternative one. But that's my thought process. And then this one, of course, is more like the winter. So I take those 4 compartments and compartmentalize them into seasons.
It's smart.
I don't know.
Yeah.
My brain so far is working that way.
I mean, you organize the way you think about paper. If you think about colors, then you organize it by color. If you think about it in seasons, then you organize it by seasons.
Not only come with themes and activities we do during those seasons, but it also comes with colors. Like I think of seasons and colors too. So seasonal, organizational in this case, because I had 4, it worked. It was like, oh yeah, there's 4
it's
seasons,
made for this.
There's 4 drawers. I was tempted to buy 2 of these.
Yeah.
Because I really, really love, one of the things that I love, this one's really full.
Is that winter? Or just the miscellaneous?
No, this one, oh, sorry, I got them backwards. This is the fall one. I love fall. So when I do see fall paper, it is anything fall. I can't go to a store during fall.
No, that's so true.
I pretty consider myself learned I learned this way. I learned it and strengthened the habits and self-control.
It's not even paper though in fall. It's every like cutely
It
designed
is everything.
thing.
Like I mean, clothes, smells, candles, food.
Paper products. She comes out with like little like hot chocolate cups and like
too.
plates. Like it's like one of the silliest things.
So yes, fall. I just need to lock myself up and be like, no, because it's the one
Don't
place
go
I
out.
haven't learned self-control yet.
Everyone has their banes.
Yeah. Like even some school ones are in here, right? Because we go to school back to school.
September.
In the fall. That one is still in the paper pack, but
Someone was wondering, this is pretty thin.
it is.
It's
and
I
that's
don't
what
even
I
think
loved
it's
about
foot
it too.
long.
It's honestly probably like, well, that's probably 6 inches here.
Yeah.
I measure everything by paper too, by the way, guys. I've learned what 12 inches looks like, and so when they're like, we go measure something, like, well, this is 12 inches,
This is
so
a-
12, 24.
Yeah.
Anyways,
She's like, this is 1-page layout. This is a 2-page layout.
this is probably
Yeah, it's not
this is
even a
probably
foot
like 8,
long.
9, 10, probably about 10 inches there.
So it is really thin, which is
Yeah.
nice.
So, like I said, I almost was like, oh, I should get 2 and just put them next to each other, but IKEA, and I do have some of this. I used to hang all my designer templates.
When it had the eyelets in
Yeah,
them.
we're moving on from paper designer templates, but and you can even poke them. I loved this. This used to be above my table, but I still keep it here with some of the mini sets that are vaulted that are not technically used anymore because I know how much you guys want them back, and we're still trying to think. We're gonna get a survey out.
Yeah.
Shouldn't even mention it because now I know everyone's gonna be
You're like,
"We're
please no.
And then I have this as well from an organizational point. I'm going on to other stuff, so hopefully I'm not boring you guys too much.
We're going to all the organization.
I've condensed my embellishments. I've used my embellishments to the best that I can. Honestly, it took me longer to go through the embellishments because I always tell you guys this, I'm kind of a simple, like, scrapbooker. Even though you guys are like, you're not a simple scrapbooker. I like the details, but sometimes I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't need them.
Just paper.
Like, I don't need the details, so I don't really use them. But then I'm always like, but I should probably maybe use the little buttons and brads and things here because I have them. Anyways, so
Aaron, I'm trying to get
kind of
this.
stuck things in here for now. These are the leftover things I have. And then I haven't cleaned this out for a while. Like this has some leftover embellishments in it too.
Yeah, so she has. Did you find this at an antique store?
I did. I got lucky and found this at an antique store. So that was nice to find. But so yeah, this cart, this goes with me everywhere.
Here.
Like I roll this into the living room.
Yeah, it goes over.
I roll it into the kitchen. I roll it wherever I happen to be. Like if we're watching a movie and I want to create something so I don't fall asleep during the movie.
Yeah.
Then I'll roll it in. All my designer templates, I'm currently storing them into the pocket sleeves.
So she puts it in the. This is Total Tiffany.
Yeah, these we have in the shop.
Yeah, so these are in the shop, and then
So
she put them in a
We
basket.
designed these with Totally Tiffany for the designer templates, and
They work
currently
really
that's
well.
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to level up in some ways, and we're working on some options.
Yeah.
We'll share when
Grow
we
as
get
you
them
go.
done. But and then I put all my tools and adhesives down here, and it does get messy, and I have to clean it up every once in a while, and then like other random things down here.
Yep.
I don't
pretty-
use this one as much.
Pretty good system.
This and this is what I always need.
Every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, other than that, here's another thing I always had a lot of early phase of scrapbooking. I bought a lot of stickers
Oh
because
yes.
we all went through that phase. And so, alphabet stickers, and I think a lot of us, same with me. I bought a Cricut and I tried to, go through that, and then I just realized it was like, it was more work. I wasn't feeling accomplished as much, right? And that was again before Play to Create Kiwi Lane system. This was just along the journey. I went through all of those phases as well. And anyways, so stickers, I went through that phase. A lot of stickers I gave to my kids because I was like, I'm just not gonna use these. But one thing I did use a lot of, not as much anymore, because I feel like a lot of my titles now, I use the title card sheets that we create. But when I don't get a Kiwi kit and they don't come with titles options, then I'll try to make a custom title with stickers. And this can be the case too for like the Cricut. I love the silhouette for like titles. A lot of people make really cute ones with those, you know. I think that's super nice to have. I sold my Cricut early on.
I don't even remember. It was so early on because I remember most of the things, and I don't ever remember you using a Cricut.
I did. I used it in the Nampa home in Idaho. That's when I bought it. I got it for Christmas. And that was back in 2008, 2007. It was like earlier, 2007 or 2006. Maybe
Yeah.
somewhere.
I remember Shiloh, or was it Grandma, who won the Cricut?
No, I won the Cricut.
You won the Cricut?
Yeah, I have a picture of
Oh, I remember because I thought you were so excited. I was like, why is she so excited
We
about
went
that?
to a scrapbooking thing. This was like 2000. It was like, I'm trying to think, 2005, 2006.
Oh, it's really early on.
Yeah, and you know, we're scrapbookers, y'all. We go to those events. We're crazy. I was like, I wrote on my shirt and I did a little picket sign, and it said.
She's like, I'm getting that Cricut.
Just like giveaway, and I said, something like, I'll pick it for a Cricut. And I just went like this. I was
should be on the marketing
protesting.
team.
Yeah, I am now. Kiwi Lane's marketing team, but I picketed in front of their booth at the time, and I just went back up and forth. I think they just gave it to me to get rid of me. In front of their booth.
Moral of the story: if you want something for free, be annoying.
Something like that. Anyways, last organizing tip, and this has been really useful because the stickers, I used to have a lot of these stickers, thicker stickers, meaning these little foam stickers and stuff. I took also these little things. Not only did they organize my card kit packs, but I separated my stickers into different colors. So like this one has reds and yellows. This one has my whites and blacks.
I organized these. I remember doing this.
Yes, she did help me organize.
And your buttons.
Yes. My daughter Lacey sometimes will come in and just mix my buttons back up again.
And then resort them.
So that she can resort them back out.
She's crazy.
Okay. So, anyways, and then like rounds and that. But slowly but surely, because I don't use these as often, I don't have a need for them as often.
And these are in the shop as well?
The containers, yeah. I'm trying
They're
to remember
totally
if they're out of
Tiffany.
stock or not, but
I'm not too sure
it
either.
will be in we developed them. Well, Tiffany had these the customized template cards. We had worked hand in hand in that because I said, well, I would want one size this, another size this, and so far it's working. I think we could definitely level up on that though. But anyways, because my stash is growing, and I'm sure your guys' is as well, right? So I want to find another solution for that. But evolution, we will evolve, and I promise I'll share it once I figure it out.
You learn as you go.
These ones, this has worked great.
Especially for your scraps
I have done
stickers.
that for at least a year or two.
They're holding up
And
really
whenever
well.
something sticks around from an organizational point, I think longer than
A year?
Yeah.
Before you're like, oh, this isn't working, try again.
Yeah, like you're like, that didn't stay organized. That's when you know it's gonna work out. And so those are a couple of tips and hopefully ideas, and I'm always looking for very inexpensive but useful, like very practical. As you guys probably know, I like practical applications, which is why the Lace Create system really speaks to me and why I find it very useful in my process as a scrapbooker. Not just as a Kiwi Lane owner, but truly as a scrapbooker, it has really helped me. So that is where I'm at in my journey. So whatever phase that you might be at in your journey, hopefully one of these, by me sharing with you my paper life cycle, right? My paper life cycle, we can call it that, has been insightful. And if you're just a newbie, like, hopefully you can just go to like jumping from the middle and buying your paper intentionally, whatever, because it really is useful. But if you happen to be in the phase where you had bought a lot of single sheets, I recommend jumping over to YouTube and checking out one of our videos, and it will narrow in on that phase and help you kind of get through that, maybe possibly to the next phase. But overall, it's nice to be to a point where, yeah, I have a few places my paper lives. And as much as I add to the collection, I did decrease the collection by finishing layouts because of the simplicity of the play to create system. So it's kind of like a yin-yang thing going on here. I add, decrease, decrease, right? So it's always kind of staying at the phase that it's currently
It's all
at.
about the balance.
And that has taken 10 years because I did start with a huge stash of random sheets of paper that I had to work through. So anyways, any other questions, Madison?
I did see Debbie asked, what's your favorite adhesive?
Oh, you know what? On adhesive, you guys, I like the 3L. I also don't mind, well, let me show you guys. For me, I always make sure I'm buying quality adhesive. So that's another lesson learned.
You used a
If
glue
you see
stick.
adhesive that is like $1 or $2,
Don't.
I would be questioning it. Because it is such a pain. Like, I opened up my 2007 albums the other day because we were looking for pictures for Madison's project. And the pages were falling apart. Because, you know, I think back in 2006, 2005, 2000, I was like, oh, yay, cheap adhesive. Well, that cheap adhesive
Does not last.
does not last.
No,
And
everything's
now I
falling
have
apart.
more work, and I have to add more adhesive to it anyways. So now I'm just adding adhesive on top of the adhesive to put them back together. I haven't done that project yet, but now I have to at some point because they're falling apart. And what if they all fall apart in my page protectors?
You need those memories preserved.
Well, then I'm not going to remember what the layout looked like if it gets too shuffled up in it.
You're right.
Now I'm venting. See? I really am.
Good
I
adhesive
albums,
matters.
I was like, oh my gosh, do not buy cheap adhesive. So, some that have lasted over the years, again, we're talking 6-7 years, is the 3L, the one that we sell in the shop. The reason why we do is because we've used it long enough, and the albums, I can tell you, are safely still together. So the pages are still stuck together. I ran out of this, but this book, I do have one. I just ran out of the refills, and I just haven't had a chance to buy any more. But this is really strong adhesive. Like, it's not forgiving. So I rarely use this just because I like to be able to not be to reposition if I need to, just in case I tear something down. So again, the 3L really helps with that. And you know what? My other adhesive is out in the living room. I am finishing a layout from, we watched a movie last night. So what was the movie we watched again?
We watched all the Audrey Hepburns. We watched My Fair Lady.
Yeah.
And Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Which Breakfast?
So.
I've seen the other one before, but for some reason I don't know if I ever saw Breakfast at Tiffany's. So
I like My Fair Lady more.
Yeah, it's really funny.
It's funny and music, and it's a
really
good one.
So, anyways, any other questions?
No.
I think I've kept you guys long enough. Hopefully this crafting episode has been helpful and insightful, and you can think about and reflect on your own journey, your own relationship with paper. Is the paper working for you? Is it giving to the relationship as much as you're giving to the relationship? Really is the question to ask. And you want that paper to work for you in your creation. So finding a rhythm and a system that how you can utilize the paper that you have, ways to look at the paper that you buy, and the way that you use the paper, and to make the time to sit down and to create, and to make that time to create and be the creator that you are, as well, is seriously important as well. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. We'll check in with you later in the community, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.
Bye.